The rain poured heavily outside as an old janitor, Ethan Carter, mopped the long, empty corridors of a prestigious university. His frail hands moved rhythmically, his wrinkled face reflecting years of struggle and hardship. To the world, he was just a janitor, an invisible man sweeping the hallways. But deep within his eyes, hidden behind the sorrow of lost dreams, flickered an ember of something extraordinary. Ethan had once been a boy fascinated by the stars. Growing up in a small town with little means, he would gaze at the night sky, drawing constellations in his worn-out notebook. He had dreamed of becoming a scientist, of reaching beyond the atmosphere and uncovering the mysteries of the universe. But life had other plans. His father's sudden death forced him to abandon his education and take on odd jobs to support his ailing mother. Eventually, he found himself working as a janitor at one of the country's most renowned research institutions. Every night, as he cleaned the laboratories, he would glance at the complex equations scribbled on the whiteboards, trying to make sense of them. He listened in on lectures while sweeping the floors, absorbing every word like a sponge. But one evening, something happened that changed the course of his life forever. As Ethan emptied the trash in a dimly lit research room, he noticed a set of equations left on the board by Professor Leonard Graves, one of the leading astrophysicists at the university. The numbers and symbols intrigued him, and before he knew it, he found himself drawn to the board, analyzing the problem in front of him. He hesitated, then, in a moment of reckless courage, he picked up a marker and began writing. For the next few nights, he made subtle corrections and additions to the equations, erasing them before morning to avoid being caught. However, one day, in his haste, he forgot to wipe the board. When Professor Graves walked in the next morning, he stared in shock at the board. The problem, which had stumped his entire team for months, had been solved. Determined to find out who had made the changes, the professor set up a small security camera. The next night, the camera captured Ethan working on another complex equation. The following morning, Graves summoned the janitor to his office. Ethan entered hesitantly, gripping his mop like a shield. The professor eyed him curiously. "Did you solve this equation?" Graves asked, pointing to the board. Ethan swallowed hard, then nodded. I just corrected a few things," he murmured. Graves was stunned. "Do you realize what you've done? You just made a breakthrough in astrophysics." Ethan lowered his gaze. "I'm just a janitor, sir." The professor shook his head. "No, you're a scientist, a brilliant one." From that day on, Ethan was no longer just a janitor. Graves took him under his wing, providing him access to books, lectures, and research papers. Ethan worked tirelessly, studying between shifts, absorbing knowledge like a man starved. His keen mind quickly outpaced even some of the brightest students in the university. Word spread like wildfire about the janitor scientist. Some dismissed him, believing it was luck, but others recognized his sheer talent. Ethan, however, ignored the noise and continued his studies with an unbreakable resolve. Years passed, and Ethan's contributions to astrophysics grew significant. One day, an opportunity came knocking. NASA was looking for researchers for a new space exploration project. Professor Graves encouraged Ethan to apply, but fear gripped him. "What if I fail?" Ethan asked. Graves smiled. "You've already conquered the hardest battle, Ethan, believing in yourself." With newfound confidence, Ethan applied. The day of the interview arrived, and he found himself in a room filled with Ivy League graduates, all with impressive credentials. When his turn came, the interviewers eyed his resume curiously. "You started as a janitor?" one of them asked. "Yes," Ethan replied, "but I never stopped being a scientist." Impressed by his story, knowledge, and resilience, NASA offered him a position. The janitor had finally reached the stars. Years later, Ethan Carter stood at NASA's headquarters, watching the launch of a space probe he had helped design. Tears welled in his eyes as he whispered, "For the boy who once dreamt among the stars." His story became legendary, a testament to the power of perseverance. He proved that no dream was too big, no background too humble, and no obstacle insurmountable. Because sometimes, even janitors can reach for the stars.